Hello and welcome to Introduction to Black Sun Gameplay. These are the Black Sun miniatures. Right now on the board we have American US Army figures and NVA troops. Each warband is led by a figure that represents you on the tabletop and is also called the boss. The most important statistic that each figure has is the CV or combat value. The boss has a CV of 5. This is the number that you will want to roll less than on a d6 to do anything in the game, and we'll get more into that later. The second most important figure on the board is the top, which is your second in command. It's your best friend. It can be an NCO, depending on whether your forces are military. They'd actually have a rank like a sergeant or corporal, or in some of the more wild factions it would just be a friend or a comrade in arms. The top has a CV of 4, so he would have to roll a 4 or less on a d6. The next group of figures that we're going to use is the regular troopers in the game, and they have a CV of 3. There is other types of troops that you can use in the game, but for the introductory rules we won't be going into them at this point in time. You can have medics, you can have also recruits or new guys, and they would just have different values for their CV as well, but this is all we're going to concern ourselves with this at this point in time. So in Black Sun, one of the most important concepts with your unit is a group. And that group is a set of figures that are all within 2 inches of each other. So this would constitute a group of figures. If we move the NVA out of the way a little bit here so they're not in. So this would be a group of figures. So if you had a couple guys over here, you'd now be constituting 2 different groups. So this is an important concept for the game in terms of determining who's taking fire, who you can fire at, and who you can move, because you activate by groups. There's also an important thing called activation, which if you're the phasing player, then you get 2 activations a turn. If you are the opponent, will get a reaction, we call it, and that's the term for it, is reaction. And the reaction actually goes in between the 2 actions that the phasing player gets to make. And then of course it switches and the other player becomes the phasing player, and you will get a reaction in between his phases. So your troops end up actually doing 3 actions per turn. So in the game turn, you first thing to do is to see who the active player is. You can use any system you want to determine who the active player is to start the game. It only matters at the beginning of the game. We usually roll a die to see who goes first. Of course, low roller wins. Youngest player can go first, whatever you decide between you and your opponent. At this point in time, we're going to go through the Americans being the active player, and they're going to do a movement. So first thing they have to do in their turn is roll on the activation table. Okay, so we're talking about activation in Black Sun. To activate, you roll on the activation chart. If you're the activating player, I rolled a 2, which means all my units can move. Chart. The way the activation chart is broken down is a standard morale group will move. On a 1 or a 2, all units will be able to move. On a 3 or a 4, units led by bosses and tops can move. And on a 5, one group can move. And on a 6, we have what is called the What the event. What the event brings in elements of the Black Sun universe to the game. These can be things like a random mortar shell landing somewhere on the table. It could be tentacles showing up and grabbing and attacking your guys. Something like that represents something that's going on in the Black Sun universe. So at this point in time, I only have 1 unit, but if I did have a couple guys over here in their own group, for instance, they would be able to move as well because I've activated everybody. So I've only got them in 1 group. And so now I do movement. You have a choice of your movement. You can walk, run, charge, or move cautiously. At this point in time, we always roll dice for movement for Black Sun. So I would roll, I want to do a run. I would announce I'm running towards the NVA figures. I roll 3 dice, I take the 2 highest. So at this point I rolled a 9, so I can move my guys 9 inches. I would take out the tape measure and move my 1 unit 9 inches towards the enemy, and I can obviously charge into them if that's what I was intending to do for the turn. So once the phasing player has done his first action, the opponent gets to react to what has just occurred. You're only allowed to react if you're within 24 inches, and if you can see, if it's within your line of sight, you can see something that's going on and the unit's been spotted. In this instance, if we have these Army guys, US Army guys have just moved up here, let's just say as the activating player, I move my army forward. Now, Dave has the opportunity to react with his NVA figures. To react, you have to activate each group separately, and you use your CV to do this. So Dave would have to roll under the CV of his best figure in this group, which at this point in time he's got his boss there, so the boss has a CV of 5. So he would have to roll a 5 or less to be able to react to what he has seen happen, these American soldiers approaching him. So Dave, roll a die, you're looking for a 5 or less. He rolls a 3, they can do what they want. Dave, what would you like to do with them?
I'd like to fire.
Okay, so Dave wants to shoot. So he wants to remain stationary and shoot. So now we would go into the shooting segment of the game. This is our Black Sun gameplay video, and we're working through shooting at this point in time. So we have the American player has moved his forces up, and the NVA player has decided he is going to shoot at the Americans. The first step in shooting is to fire the boss and the top, and then the grunts will throw their fire in. So in this instance, the boss has a pistol, and a pistol has a range of 9 inches. Now, the NVA player has not moved, they were in this position, so he's firing from stationary. It shows on the chart when you fire from stationary, a pistol can fire out 9 inches. So Dave, the pistol also gets 1d6. The top has a assault rifle. He will get 3d6 out to 36 inches, which he's obviously within 36 inches. And the 3 grunts on top of the hill have bolt action rifles, so they would get 2d6 out to 18 inches, which is obviously within range of 18 inches right here. So that's the dice he's going to get. The grunts will be rolling for 3s, because again, that's their CV, their combat value. The top will be looking for a 4, because that's his combat value, and the boss will be looking for. He is going to roll his boss is going to roll first, because his boss gets to choose the target. So go ahead, Dave, what do you need?
I need a 5 with my boss, and I'm going to be aiming for the top right at the front of the unit.
Yes, the boss gets to choose his target. He rolled a 1, so that's a hit. So now we would go to the cheating death table to see what effect the hit was. So the pistol has an impact of 1. All weapons have an impact value. The pistols is 1. All these weapons are actually 1s. The combat shotgun is 2. Heavy support weapons are 2 larger size weapons. The American soldiers are considered protective, which gives them an armor grade of 2. We take 2 minus the impact value of 1, and we get a 1. So he's rolling on the 1 chart. So roll away, Dave, and see what you do to that top. So he rolled a 4, which is a -1 CV wound. So we can put a -1 CV wound on there. We also need to keep track of how many hits occur to the unit, so we can put a die down or keep track in some other way that we want to keep track of how many hits are done. So that was the first. So now Dave is going to fire his top. His top has an assault rifle, so he's going to get 3d6. And his CV is 4, so he's rolling for 4s to hit. Roll away, Dave.
And this time I'm going to choose to fire at the boss instead.
That's right, the top gets to choose his target. So he rolled a 6, which will be a miss, but he got 2 hits. And sorry, you said the boss is the target?
Yes.
And again, he's rolling on the 1 chart, because the same applies. Basically, all NVA shooting at Americans will be on the 1 chart. So roll. He rolled 2 hits, so he gets to roll twice on the. Ooh! 2 6s are 2 rolls on the out of action chart. So on the out of action chart, we put the figure face down and we check later. We'll check later to see what happens to that figure, but it's not good. So that was the second shot. Pause. So now we're going to shoot the grunts. The grunts are all using bolt action rifles, which again are 2d6 out to 18 inches. So Dave will get 6 dice. We'll roll them all together because the CV is 3 for all those guys, so Dave's looking for 3s or less. Go ahead, Dave. Ooh, lots of 6s. So the 2 is a hit. So everything missed except the 1. So we only did 1 hit. So you can take those ones away. 1 hit on the group. Now the grunts don't get to choose their target. It's a random target. So Dave needs to roll to see which guy he hit. It could be any of them, including the boss. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and a 6. We'll just re-roll it to see. So it's the second guy. So he hit the top. Well, he's concentrating fire on the command in this time. So then he's going to roll on the cheating death table to see what happens to the figure. He rolled a 3. Again, on the 1 table is a duck back. Now to mark a duck back, we turn the figure around to face the rear. This just means that his next action is used up. He's basically gone to ground. He'll have to turn around and spend his whole action recovering. If the player chooses to do that, that'll be his next action. Alright, so that's Dave's shooting done. He did another hit. So he did 4 hits total. So we have 2 things we have to do is, if you do as many hits to the group as there are figures in the group, then you would get a pin marker. He has knocked down a figure, so there's only 4 guys left and he's done 4 hits, so he'll get a pin marker. The second thing we have to do is that the boss has to roll on the out of action. He rolls a d6 and he has to roll twice because he got out of action twice, which is not. Ooh, a 6 is not going to be good. So 6 is a gory death, notably bloody death in combat. A 1, it would actually, if a 1 result had been the only result, he would have been stunned. He would have received a -1 CV wound, and if not in cover, the model can move to safety 4 inches away and cannot shoot or fight at all until return to action. So, however, he's dead, so he can come off the table. And at this point in time, the Americans see why it's not good to approach NVA position in the open, and that is shooting. This is our Black Sun gameplay video close combat example. So we're following on from where we were in the previous shooting video. The NVA have now decided to charge the pinned down American position. Alright, so go ahead.
So I'm going to be charging in, so I'm going to be rolling 3 dice.
There you go. 10 inches. Take the 2 highest. This is 10 inches. So you stop 1 inch away. So everybody moves up to 1 inch away. Now at this point in time, the player receiving the charge, the group receiving the charge, would be able to do defensive fire at the charging figures. However, in this case, the US Army figures are fire. They cannot do defensive fire, so Dave has done a good job and timed his charge perfectly. So, we will finish the close combat at this point in time. Each figure in close combat gets 1d6 unless they have a assault rifle, a grenade, or a shotgun. In this instance, Dave has 3 guys with bolt action rifles. They will get a dice each. He has a top with an SMG. He will get 2 dice, and the boss gets 1 die. It's important to know which dice you're rolling because, again, they're rolling for their CB or less. All rolling is done simultaneously. The Americans will get 2 dice per figure. They have 4 figures. So the Americans will get. However, the Americans are pinned, so they will have a -1 on their CB. And the top has a light wound, so he will have a further -1, having a -2. So, who wants to roll first, Dave?
Why don't you go ahead first?
So, my top gets 2 dice, and he's looking for a 4 -2. He's looking for 2s. He got 1 hit. All rolling is done simultaneously, and all wounds are taken randomly in the combat, so you can do all the rolling at once. The rest of my guys are all 3s, so I'm going to get 6 dice for 3s. However, they're going to be -1 due to the fact that they're pinned. And so a 2 is a hit, so I got 2 hits on Dave. So Dave, you can go ahead and roll your hits.
So I've got my hero with 1, and my top with 2.
So the top needs 4, so that's 1 hit. This 6 is a miss, so you got 1 hit so far.
And my 3 grunts.
3 grunts get 1 die each. They need 3 or less, so we got 2 hits. I'm going to pull those 6s out. So the combat is a tie with 2 hits to each side. We would roll on the cheating death table for each hit, and they're considered randomly. So Dave's hits, I will roll 2 dice. He's got 5 guys, so 6 will be a reroll. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I got 2 5s. Now the other rule is that no figure can take 2 hits as long as there's somebody else to hit. So that boss takes 1, and I would re-roll the other 5 to get a 3. So the third figure would be hit. So we're going to do a hit here and a hit here. So Dave, you're going to roll on the 0 on the cheating death table. Roll a d6 for the boss. The 4 is a -2 CV wound, so we put a wound marker on him. And roll for the regular grunt guy. He gets a 1, which is going to be okay. Alright, good rolling. Now I have 2 hits. Dave, do you want to roll randomly to see who they're on? The top will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5 and a 6 is a reroll. 6 reroll the 1. So number 2 is the guy with the radio here. He's rolling on the cheating death chart as a 1. He gets a 4, which is a -1 CV wound. And the other guy, which is number 4, so this gentleman at the back here, he gets a 5, which is a -2 CV wound. So, to figure out who won the close combat, we add up what we call nerve points. So for each wound caused with a +1 CV loss counts towards winning the fight. So Dave did 2 to this guy and 1 to this guy, so he's got a total of 3. I did 2 to the boss, so I have 2. So Dave is winning the fight 3-2. If there was a stunned model, we didn't have anybody stunned, or we didn't have anybody fall down. Caused a gory wound, we didn't have any of that. Wounded, a gory wound, knocked out. Okay, and a wound that happened to a boss, top, or recruit. I did 1 to a boss. Dave did 1. No, you didn't do 1 of that. He was already there. So I did 1 to the boss. That puts my total up to 3. And that's it. So the fight comes out as a 3-3 tie. It's a draw, which, you know, we both rolled 2 hits, so not too much of a shock. Which means it depends what the total is. If it's an odd total, then the players move the figures away 2 inches, and that's the end of the fight. If it's an even total, then they continue another round of fighting. So the points done were 3, which is odd, so both sides will move 2 inches away, and that will be the end of the NVA turn. Which I don't have my... So that's the introduction.